I have a shocking title today. I left it to ChatGPT to make it up. And this is what it came up with after we kind of negotiated a little bit. Non-duality gone wrong when spiritual awakening turns dark. Yeah. So, yeah, that's quite an intense title. When spirituality turns dark. So this week I've been reading Arma's assistance account, if any of you have ever read that before. She left the ashram in 2000 and yeah, 2000 actually, and it's called Holy Hell. I went to see Arma, I think like 2007, 2008, 9, I don't know the years. I've been there a few times. And I think I saw her in London as well. And one time when I was there, I did 5 hugs with her. And in that time, I think we were there like 5 or 6 days or a week at her ashram. And I had one of these like energetic awakenings for a whole day where like there was just like this expansiveness and nobody here. And I was just totally, we were doing bhajangs and I was totally in the bhajang. It was just, I was with Roger Castillo, my teacher at the time, but he was off at the train station for 8 hours getting tickets. And I was just like off my face. It was so beautiful. So it's super interesting to read the account of Holy Hell. And so this is where non-duality and then spirituality gone wrong. The question that you could ask yourself is it possible for the spiritual path to go wrong? That's an interesting question. Is it possible for anything to be different from what it is? Yeah. But before I answer that question, I think it's appropriate that I first of all explain what awakening is for me and what I mean by that, because it seems that so many different teachers and people have such a different idea and sense of what awakening is for them. So I will first of all speak about what it is here. So, how to start? Where to start? Yeah, so spirituality is such a wide subject. There's the spirituality that like works on the body mind and works on the person. So you can do yoga, you can do Kriya yoga, you can do breath work, astral traveling, auras. There's so much spirituality out there. And I've always been taught, and from my experience, that non-duality is slightly different, or wholly different, as some people would say, but that it's different. And the difference is yeah, I've always been taught that non-duality is different, and from my experience, it's different from working on yourself. A lot of teachers will teach that these practices lead you to non-duality, and then some teachers will totally deny that. For me, it seems like we often have to sort out some of the human stuff before there can be this non-dual realization. But the shift or the non-dual realization is actually beyond the person that's doing that. It's not something that the person can ever get to or achieve or work out. No. And what is the non-dual realization? So, to me, which might sound like a lot of what my teachers say as well, or other non-duality teachers say, to me, non-duality is a waking up to a reality beyond the person, in which the person comes and goes in, but isn't actually something that the person owns. When we're born, we don't have a sense, I don't think, of identification. So the baby is in pure beingness. It just is. And then as it gets older, it begins to believe that it's a body-mind mechanism. So it begins to believe that I am this body, I am a name, I am an age, I am a good boy, a good girl, or good non-binary child. I am good. And then in that, there's always a sense of there's something missing, because there is something missing. As soon as the child begins to believe that it's a name and a form, there's always the disconnection from that pure being it was before it identified. Even though it's still the pure being, it cannot not be the pure being or the pure consciousness. It feels like it's lost something, but it doesn't know what, because pure being and the big consciousness is not a thing. So it can't identify what it's lost. It can't be like, oh, yeah, I lost pure being or I lost consciousness, because how could you know that when the person that it's becoming is something in thought and only recognizes things in thought? Whereas pure being and the empty looking is who you truly are. It's not a thought, it's beyond a thought. So the child begins to feel the seed of discomfort, but it's not there all the time. It's like it comes and goes, the seed of discomfort. And then as it identifies more and gets older, and then it particularly seems to like hit in puberty, then this like more solid person seemingly rises, and more sort of discomfort. But they might not really realize that they're uncomfortable. What they might realize is that they're always waiting for something to happen, and always kind of living in a hope or aversion or trying to get to. But this is confusing because the mind is confusing. It changes its mind, and then the body has different feelings, and in the different feelings, the stories become colored differently. So it's a bit of a blur. But if you really examine it, you begin to notice that a lot of the time what you're thinking about is what is not. You're not actually thinking about what's here. You're thinking about what's not and what you want or what you don't want. And then as you age, this gets stronger, because it's like anything, it's a habit, it's invested in. Just like if you invest in doing yoga every day, the body will increase its ability, mostly. There'll always be someone where they decrease ability, but mostly you will improve at yoga or improve at learning a language, the more that you practice it. And that's the same with the identification. The more that you practice being you, the stronger it gets, even though it doesn't feel like a practice run, it's just like happening. And that doesn't stop. That will just get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And so what happens as you age is there tends to be more, what's that word, remnants, romanticizing youth. Because as you age, it will become more and more uncomfortable. But you won't notice that. You won't even acknowledge that. What you'll do is you'll think about youth when, things were easy and you didn't have responsibility. So you'll imagine that responsibilities or because of this or having to work. So, but it will get tighter and tighter. And then because as you get older, the body is decreasing. So I think after the age of 25, you decrease, your body begins to rot. Not really rot, but begins to go downhill. So as you get older and older, you also can't do as much, but there is still that seeking energy that's wanting to do. So it's kind of like the body mind becomes heavier and heavier. So you often see a lot of people then in their 40s beginning to seek spiritually. Can also happen in the teens and 20s, but often in the 40s, seeking begins. And they also say like the midlife crises, because you've often got a lot of things that you wanted, or you failed at getting a lot of things that you wanted. And you've sort of become more uncomfortable, and you realize, getting another thing, getting another house or getting another job's most probably not going to do it. So then another possibility begins to arise. And then is the whole spiritual dance. So there's all different spiritual paths that can be taken. And I would love it if they did a study as to what personalities are attracted to different spiritual paths. So yeah, that would be fascinating. So there's so many different paths you can take. But generally in most of the like common paths. So if you did Buddhism, anything that's Hindu, Jainism, Sikhism, even Sufism and forms of Christianity. So most of those paths, the essence of what God is begins to sound very non-dual. And what non-duality is a movement back to the beingness you were prior to identifying with name and form. Or it's a release from being identified as a name and a form back to what you truly are, which is the empty looking and the pure being. And that stops being inside the body, belonging to somebody, and is everywhere. And then the human vessel is moving and appearing and disappearing in that. So it's a shift around. So rather than a person experiencing, it's beingness and the empty looking experiencing, but not as a thing, not as an idea, not as something you can find, which is very trippy. And it's a release energetically. So some people call it, I often call it like the end of suffering, not the end of pain and pleasure, not the perfection of the human where they become some perfect, holy person. It's this end of this energetic contraction where you feel like you're inside the body and life is happening to a you. And it's a release back to what you truly are. And this beingness and empty looking is no thing and everything, not a thing and all things. So they're not a thing, they're not something you can grab hold of, they're not something you can own, and they're simultaneously all things. So it's beingness, being conscious of itself as all things. And it's innately in everybody's experience because everybody is conscious and everyone has that sense of existence. It's just that it's been personalized into personal consciousness and the personalized I am, and then believed to be a somebody, to belong to somebody. So to go back to the title, now I've explained what non-duality is. I've forgotten the title already. Non-duality gone wrong when awakening turns dark. So the question that I asked in the beginning is, could awakening turn dark? So could your path go wrong? Could there be alternative paths? So we could say, like if we took an example from this book, Holy Hell, which I was speaking about if you've just joined, it's a book from Arma's attendant or carer. And yeah, it's really interesting to read. And I feel like she's a really beautiful person because she's not blaming anyone or pointing fingers or trying to get revenge. She's just saying it very factually about what happened to her as Arma's assistant. And she's just using it as a recovery. So if we took her experience, like, could it be any other way? So when we say it's gone wrong, it's like there is an alternative that's gone right. And she could have had this path that's gone right. And is that true? Could any of us ever have a different experience than what's happening? I think in language, it's like a good thing to be able to discern. Like when we say a spiritual path that's gone wrong, it's like an acknowledgement of bad things that happen. But it's hard in language, like an acknowledgement of bad things that can happen. So saying gone wrong is like a way of saying that there were things that were very difficult in that situation, and there are things definitely that we could change and improve on in the future. So just to start off with that, like, can your spiritual path actually go wrong? Or can it only be what it is? And I feel like this is like a really beautiful attitude. And I feel like the lady that wrote Holy Hell maybe had this attitude, as in, it's not right what happened to her, and we can name it as abuse. But so it's not a right thing to happen, and we can name it as abuse, and that it wasn't fair what happened to her, and yeah, it was harsh what happened to her. But then there's another internal attitude that you can take where it's not acknowledging or denying bad things that happen and when people are being abusive, but it's this internal attitude where everything is an opportunity to expand. So I see most probably the purpose of life is expansion. The purpose of waking up is to expand back into what we are as consciousness and beingness, which is all things. That's infinite to infinity. And then on the human level, I feel like our goal is to continuously expand. And what I mean by expand is open to love. Love seems like the most expansive thing there is. So even in abusive situations, or when you've been on a spiritual path that has gone wrong, if there is this attitude where everything is an opportunity to expand, then yeah, these things can be looked at in a different light. They can be looked at as like Okay, so these bad things happened, and that is traumatic and that is abusive. And if I can, I will spread the word so it doesn't happen to other people. For example, you don't have to do that if you've been in abuse. But after I have healed enough to allocate appropriate blame, to be able to heal and take responsibility for my part and give responsibility for the other person's part, like this attitude of this can only make me expand more. This is an opportunity to expand more into love, to see what's false in me, what's false in the other, and to love unconditionally, not to hate the other person, but to find, it doesn't even have to be forgiveness, but a lack of internal hatred towards them. So you're kind of setting them free. You're seeing that what they've done is abusive, but you're not hating them. Your heart is free. That's such a profound thing to do. But that's not skipping. If you've been through abuse, you should go through abuse therapy to understand it and release emotions and release trauma. But it's this final step where it lines up with spirituality, where it's seeing that everything is unconditioned love. And that too is God. So, yeah, that's a hard thing to talk about because I don't want to deny people that have been through abuse or make them bypass and not deal with it in an appropriate way. So other ways in which spirituality can seemingly go wrong, but it's not really wrong. It can't be any other way, is this bypassing. And you're trying to fix the human by denying that there is a human. And that's never going to work. So on the human level, you have to do the human stuff. You have to do the human practices to release trauma, to understand what's going on in you psychologically, to let go of neurosis. There's all types of stuff out there. So this is why in a lot of spiritual practices, there is lots of breath work, which can be trauma release, body work, understanding the mind, understanding psychology, stilling the mind, all these different practices to help calm the person down. And there's phenomenal practices out there. There's so much being discovered, and there's so much that was already there from people that have come before. When you try to use "there is nobody" to not feel fear in the body or to not feel pain, then that is what we could say is, it's not really gone wrong, because there can't be another other way, but it's something that is problematic. Spiritual bypassing. So there's nothing wrong with feelings. I feel like awakening is absolute acceptance of all feelings that are appearing, not this idea of perfect feelings. The person that wants to awake wants to get rid of all difficult feelings, often, and wants to have just pleasurable feelings. And that's an impossibility. You'll be running on in a hamster's ball forever to try to get perfect feelings. So what often happens is there is a cutting off of the body-mind, and there's just a living in the mentality, in thought and imagination. And just in this imagination of you being a nobody. and you telling yourself the story of being a nobody. Whereas being a nobody is coming back to what's actually happening, which includes all the body, because the body is here, and all the sensations and all the feelings. It's not a story of I am nobody. You don't get a label saying I am nobody. There's just a movement back to the stillness of what you are, which is this empty looking and pure beingness. And it's not a thought, it's not a feeling, an idea, it's not a practice or a behavior. It's that which is. So what is it that's looking now? What is it that's experiencing? Who is experiencing? The mind comes up with ideas, but what about the actual experience? Is there somebody in there looking? Or is this everything looking? Or no thing looking? The mind is objectifying, so the mind is saying here, there. But what is it that's experiencing the mind and the thoughts? You can't find that place with the mind, but yet it's here. So right here. Nobody switches perception on. When you wake up in the morning, you don't be like, okay, we've got to turn on consciousness. There is consciousness, and what gets turned on is you. There is consciousness in deep sleep, but you are switched off, so you can't remember it. So what gets switched on in the morning is you, with your memories, with your world, with your ideas. So what is it there prior to you that can only be found here? Not in a story of being no one, not in a story of awakening, of getting somewhere. It can only be here, beyond mentality. And the same with the pure being. The pure being and the empty looking are the same. Some would say it's like pure being, being conscious. So pure being is prior, and some people, say nothing and everything. It doesn't really matter the words, because this isn't verbal. This isn't verbal. What is beyond the verbal? So what is it that's perceiving me? Who is it that's perceiving me? Anything you imagine isn't it. It's there instantaneously in the perception. So you're perceiving my chair, my beautiful flowers, that's hard. My beautiful lava lamp. And when you were listening to me and concentrating on me, they were being perceived without a thought. So you maybe had thoughts about me, but they were being perceived without thoughts. And that's it. That is the way there. There is perception happening. And there's not something that's actually perceiving it from a position. The object and the perception are the same. But when you're looking at me speaking, there's more identity and ideas. There's more you and me. Whereas the stuff in the background of me, it's being perceived instantaneously without any thought. There is consciousness there, perception there. And the same with pure being. So there is pure being here. And everything is appearing in that and as that. You don't exist. There is existence. And there's no internal or external to that existence. And this isn't a feeling. This isn't about you feeling good. This isn't about getting right emotions. It's here when the body doesn't feel good and doesn't have right emotions. That's the mind. And sometimes in the beginning of the spiritual path, you have to learn that it's something you do in the mind because there needs to be settling down of things. But then there's a point where it's what's beyond the mind, what's beyond action, what's beyond doing. Who is experiencing that's not moving, isn't moving, that's always here. It's so silent and awake. It's never suffered a day, ever. And it's total unconditioned love. The existence part, the being, is the love part. They come together though. The perception is kind of the emptiness and nothing, and the being is the love. I sometimes say the I amness, but from studying Nisargadatta Maharaj in these book clubs, I understand that that's like, calls it like the personalized I amness, like the personalized beingness. And so some teachers call it the I amness, but they mean it as impersonal I amness. Yeah, that's the problem with words. And then the last awakening gone wrong is, I suppose, is cults and sort of more narcissistic people, or maybe narcissistic psychopaths, sociopaths becoming teachers. But again, it can't really go wrong, but just in language. And to avoid that, then there needs to be the learning and understanding of what cults and narcissistic abuse is. And then there'll be able to be a discernment when you're getting into abusive realms rather than staying true to the path that's arising in you, which is only one path. Yeah. Yes, if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to write them in Telegram. I think you can write them in Zoom now. And you can also put your hand up in Zoom. Oh, nice.